Hello everyone, welcome to this video. We are going to continue the sim which we started in the previous video when black is playing on the queen side, trying to slow down white's play by gaining space there. So let's see. We are quickly getting into this position, g4, c6. So both sides are pushing where they are weaker on paper. Knight h3, cd, cd, bishop d7, knight f2, b5, knight d1, and black played rook f to c8, so he did not take on d2, but played rook f c8. I mean, basically almost no difference, because we can now trade queens. So, okay, of course it's a question that what if black is not trading queens, but for this queen it's hard to find a very good square. And okay, of course, this is also a way not to trade queens, but then the knight is going to e3, and then white should really like that we have this c4 square to operate with. And okay, queen can go back to b6, for example, but then white will just continue slowly, like king f1, king g2, and most probably at some moment dropping back with the bishop to e3 with ideas like knight d3. So of course it's possible to keep the queens on the board, but it doesn't really look like something great for black. Not that the endgame, is something very tempting, but that's normally what black is going for. So queen a5, rook takes a5, and bishop d2. Of course, it's always a question whether to include a move like h6 or not, because h6 would force bishop h8, and if it would take a lot of time for black to bring this bishop back, then I would seriously consider h6, but somehow it doesn't feel like so. Knight e8, bishop f6 is coming anyway. So it's good to keep this option of, maybe sometimes we push, maybe sometimes we take. Now just, we keep it like this. We don't have to make any decisions. So bishop d2 was played, rook back to a8. And even though it looks like that, the position is very slow, it's almost closed. Even here, there are some details which could change the game, on the spot pretty much. And, here white made an inaccurate move, which could have led to quite okay position for black. So white played knight to d3 in this position, which, we already discussed this thing that this knight on c5, that's one, if you manage to trade it, or just get rid of it somehow, or knight d3 not only threatening to trade but also to go to b4 to that weak square. So what else than knight d3? And indeed knight d3 is the most not logical move, but it's just not quite working, at least not as well as it should. So let's see what happened in the game, and then we will return to what was better. So knight d3, and black played knight e8. That's obviously not the refutation of knight to d3. But there was one move which normally is not a problem at all for white. It's rather like a surprisingly bad move from black, I would say, which is a3. So why it is bad normally? Okay, so what we want to play, we of course don't want to trade, super active rook and another rook is coming. I mean, no. We want to play b3. And what black did is he separated the pawns, isolated them in a way, and then So white can, for example, play bishop b4 and in that way attack a3. And yeah, a3 basically needs constant protection like knight e3, knight c2 ideas to simply attack, and more probably than not to collect this pawn on a3, and white has no issues whatsoever that we allow this pawn to a3. So that's why normally it's not happening from black. Correctly so, but here the difference is that we play b3 and then black has knight takes d3 check. So one illogical move, second illogical move, because black doesn't want to part ways with that knight. Now if bishop b4, king d2 and so on, knight c3, both pawns are weak, black is just lost. But knight takes d5 is the surprise for us. Suddenly this bishop and the rook is under x-ray. So if we play it, I mean, whatever we play, we are losing at least a pawn. So now e4, black has a winning position in this case. So we have to be somewhat careful. Therefore, we return to this position, and what is a good move in this position is for example, rook to b1. Getting off or getting out from this diagonal, and the tactics are not going to work anymore with a3, never, because the rook is simply not there, and we will continue our play with knight d3, knight b4, probably then knight c3 and so on. So this little move, probably also rook c1 is fine, but rook b1 is just very easy. So yeah, knight d3 was a mistake. Actually, yeah, I have to say that in case of a3, once again, b3 is almost like like an automatic reaction, but we still can be quite okay after knight takes c5, ab, knight b2, dc, even though I already don't like this so much, but we have strong move a4 here, so we have to do something with these pawns, and apparently this position is still somewhat better for white, but a4 is already a super difficult move to find in a way. But we just have to separate the pawns, even if it's a pawn sacrifice, our knight will be very active and so on, and still actually quite good for white, but this is not something we want in general. Okay, so knight d3, knight d8, so chances are missed for black. So now knight b4, bishop f6, knight e3, bishop to d8, rook d1, bishop b6, and h takes on g6. Yeah, so this is an extra option. If we don't play h6 too quickly, then if black is, for example, trying to activate the bishop on the queen side, then we can suddenly open and create some threats against the black king. So h takes g6, correct move is h takes g6. And here, for example, we can play king f1. Idea is king g2. Of course, king f2 is also possible, but better not to go into the diagonal. So we just play king f1. We are going to play king g2, and then we will double. Oops. We will double on the h file, and it will be not so easy for this king. If it goes to g7, sometimes even bishop c3, to have some ideas like that. So, and yeah, on the queen side, nothing is happening. It's completely locked for now, and it will only change if white wants to change. So in any case, this was the correct move. Black played fg6, which looks like the more tempting move, because it's not opening the h file. So even if we attack on the h file, if black protects h7, then the king is completely safe, and also the rook can come to f file to create counterplay. But it has a big problem, and yeah, I will suggest you to stop the video a little bit and try to find the good move for white. So congrats if you managed. So the good move, and already this knight rook d1 move looked a little bit mysterious, but this knight c6 is very, very strong here. So we have knight e7 threat first and foremost, and the pawn is also hanging here. And if black takes, then the d file is opening, and also the b pawn will remain weak. So, but okay, black has no other choice, otherwise the pawn is lost. So bishop takes, d takes, and rook takes, bishop takes b5. Let's say rook back to c8 and knight to d5. So our pieces are fantastic here. And okay, this is a tempo here, it's red here, so black is even losing material. Bishop d8 would be the only move, but that drops the knight on e8, so black is just collapsing very quickly. And if instead of rook c6, black plays rook b8, then we have bishop b5. And black can move the bishop, let's say, to d8. So attacking the bishop and also the b2 pawn, but unfortunately for black, this is a check, and that gives white a huge advantage. So there we can return to hg6. So in this position, knight c6 is not that obvious, because after takes bishop d8, if we take on b5, rook b8, it is not a check. So that's why we have to play a little bit differently, and now we are going to lose c6 pawn in this way. But okay, as I showed, we just play king f1 double, and very unpleasant for black. But now this position after fg, chance missed for white. He played king f2 instead of knight c6, basically like crashes pretty much. So king f2, it's not a good move. And yeah, black had a chance to activate himself a little bit with knight f6. So now there are tricks on e4 with checks, then probably taking the bishop, and the bishop is taking the knight, so suddenly quite active ideas. And if you play king g2, then rook is coming to f8, and position is not clear at all. Suddenly black's pieces get some counterplay. He has ideas like h5 to maybe even activate this knight, and if we go knight c6, then he has this again strong sacrifice with the knight. So now again knight d2 is a threat, because the rook, the knight will be unprotected. Also now rook f2 is a threat. It just became a huge mess instead of the normal 2 result game. So yeah, it's not good. And in any case, if you want to move the king here, just don't put it into the bishop's diagonal, I would say. So it was a chance for black, but he missed it with knight c7. Too passive. So you can see that all what black is trying to do is to save the game on the queen side, but yeah, white also can switch. First of all, we always have this knight c6, which is super unpleasant to meet. So black has to be ready, but we can also create something on the king side, and basically with that, white is winning the game here. So king g3, rook f8, g5, rook f4, kicking now the rook back, king f8. Yeah, so now hinting at ideas that maybe at some moment we want to play f4, knight c7, knight to a3, rook b8. So black has just to wait. I mean, very unpleasant. Bishop d2, king g7, bishop c3. So now the king is in the diagonal. Rook f8, bishop went back. A little bit just a maneuvering game here and there. And after rook f7, at some moment, white decided to go for knight c6, and black basically collapsed. So yeah, this move is a huge threat for us in this type of endgame. So b5 pawn is hanging. there is no way simply to protect. So that's a huge issue. So black took, went here, and knight e6, trying to maybe get this pawn or get something on d4, but d6 pawn is falling, then the whole position is falling, bishop d4, and now knight b5, so everything is falling apart if here, then here. So black went knight f4 takes, knight b5, and then rook d4, and he resigned. So knight is lost. If ed, then bishop e5 check and take. And if knight d4, then again just bishop e5 check and wins the game. So yeah, this knight c6 is super unpleasant, but again, this rather just shows that if black is waiting like this passive, I just shuffle the pieces a little bit, and at some moment when it was quite painful for black, he went for this idea. But okay, let me just make some random moves. Okay, nonsense king h2 to show that the problem is that what black is doing, like knight a6, challenging this knight, or rather the other one looks more natural. Then we just take, and this pawn is hanging. So it's not really working. What if bishop a5? Problem with bishop a5 that this is asking for knight c6, because it's not only attacking the pawn, but also the bishop here. And if takes, then takes. Hanging here. So it's really tough for black to do anything with this, His pieces are just stuck and waiting for knight c6, whether it works or not. And it worked quite effectively here, and normally it does work quite effectively. So that's quite against the structure. This is a very dangerous plan.